shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet.
Hello.
Do.
Now,
But then my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body.
I think we'll begin now. I'd like to, my name is Denise Nanish, Scientific Director at ISGlobal, and I'd like to welcome you all today for this interesting day that we're going to have discussing open science and research assessment. I think you're all here because it's, as I like to say, we're being witness to a mini revolution in science in a positive way, in visualizing change, in how we do things, to go towards openness and everything that really science stands for. So I'm very happy to welcome you today. And we have an agenda, as you've seen, with several keynote speakers, and we'll have a roundtable. And so I will present straight away our first keynote speaker, who is Dr. Javier Lopez Albacete, who works as a policy officer at the European Commission, the Directorate for Research and Innovation, in the Open Science Unit. And he is a researcher as well, and in theoretical physics. And today he will speak to us about open science and new methods of research assessment. So, thank you, Javier.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and for calling this meeting to discuss this very important topic. Thank you very much also for calling me yet a researcher, when now people refer to me as an Eurocrat. That carries a lot worse connotation. That's very kind. So what I would like to do here today is to explain to you a little bit what are the main elements and the progress made in this process or movement, or some people prefer to call it, to reform research assessment. There are several things going on at the European level. We, the Commission, are heavily involved in this process. And okay, that is the main motivation. I understand that the title of the workshop includes also the word open science, which is, of course, I work in the open science unit at the Commission. And I hope it will be clear that these two topics are very closely interconnected. That is why I will focus mostly only in explaining what is happening in research assessment. If I have time at the end, maybe I will talk about other initiatives that we are pursuing related to open science. Okay, so the first thing, of course, is to explain why, the motivation, what is the rationale behind the need for reforming the way that the research is evaluated. That is very difficult to summarize in just one slide or in 5 minutes, but I will try to identify the main points that we have identified, as I said, through a very heavy round of consultations with many stakeholders. So over the years, a system that consists mostly in assessing research by looking at the publications as the main output of research work has been consolidated over the years. It is funny because, as far as I know, no one decided that. It's something that happened somehow spontaneously or by a number of factors that, in a way, they become solid. Well, this is an issue, first of all, because researchers do many other things than producing publications, especially depending on the context. But that is a very narrow way of looking at how research actually works. Moreover, not only publications are the main element in assessment, but their quality or their impact is many times assessed according to metrics that are not adequate. You all know about the journal impact factor, and I think that there is no single bibliometrician, I was going to say in the room, I don't know if there is anyone in the room, in the world, let me make an overstatement, that would argue that the journal impact factor is a good measure of neither the quality nor the impact of an individual contribution, of an individual paper. So we are looking only at publications, and we are assessing or valuing them according to metrics that are known, and there is very strong consensus about that they are not adequate to assess quality. Okay. Again, as I said, this is a problem because research is changing. This system offers a very distorted image of the work of a researcher, of a research team, or a research institution. Research assessment should be, ideally, a tool that is useful to researchers, that when you look yourself in the mirror, you get a more or less as accurate as possible image of what you are doing as a researcher. However, by receiving the feedback only on publications, there are many things that fly below the radar and that are not put in value. As I said, science in general is changing for many different reasons. The scientific questions that we, and by we I mean the scientific community at large globally, is trying to tackle are more and more complex. This requires collaboration. This requires a distribution of roles and skills within teams to tackle these very big questions, and therefore a diversity of profiles of the people that contribute to the quality of the research work. An obvious element of this transformation is the digital transition. There are more, but I would like to highlight this one. More and more research is data-driven, or discoveries are enabled by data, access to data, analysis of data, and this also requires specific tools like software, etc., etc. Also, the role that science plays in society, or in other words, the demands that society puts on science are also changing. And it is expected that science contributes more and more to solve many of the big problems that we have, the so-called big societal challenges. This could be of economic nature, democratic, it could be climate change, it could be the energy crisis, etc., etc. Now, if you think how science can best contribute to these problems, it's certainly not by producing many papers with a high journal impact factor. There are many other ways in which you can help in that direction. Another problem that the current system, and of course, when I say the current system, I am talking about the very generalized practices. Not everyone is proceeding this way. Another problem is that the so-called publish or perish culture is introducing excessive or even toxic competition within the academic world, and this is highly diminishing the attractiveness of research careers. This competition is not really needed, it's imposed by the assessment systems. And this is a very important problem forward-looking, because there is a very strong global competition for talents, for researchers. I mean, you go to every single international fora talking about these topics, and you hear consistently the same message. We need more scientists. We need more talented, skilled people. Okay, then put good conditions, make the research environment attractive for them. Now, if you think about this set of incentives, publish quickly, in large numbers, and in high journal impact factor system as the main driver of the research culture, this also introduces a big number of unintended or dysfunctionalities in the system. First of all, it disincentivizes taking risks. I mean, you wouldn't tackle a problem if you know or you don't have some certainty that it's going to lead to a publication, because you may need it for the next promotion or for the next grant or something like that. It also disincentivizes locally oriented research. This is especially a very acute issue in some disciplines, especially in social sciences and humanities. Because if you look at a problem that has a local aspect, the chances that you publish in a high journal impact factor that are normally of global scope, they are also normally published in English, are less and less. So this is shifting or directing the incentives in a direction that is not the right one. Of course, it is also a blocking element for collaboration and openness. Why would a researcher share very early their research ideas or data or preliminary findings with the others, and therefore putting at risk the probability of getting a high journal impact factor publication. And of course, this diminishes the rhythm, the pace of scientific discovery. It's obvious. I mean, the more you hide your data set, the longer it will take for the others to take profit of that. And in the worst cases, it's also, of course, it can introduce not very professional practices. For instance, I mean, why not just publishing an article with all the results and instead slicing the data set into 3 or 4 different sub-problems simply with the only goal, not because that improves the quality of what you are sharing with the community, with the only goal of scoring a few more publications. In the worst cases, it can even lead to breaches of the integrity and professional conduct that is expected from scientists, like bias in the data selection so that the results fit your narrative. And it's also provoking or creating an industry of predatory journals that offer the service to the scientists of getting precisely there, easily get high journal impact factor publications. Okay, so all these concerns, and there are more because when you discuss about this topic, people approach it from very different angles. It's not the same your viewpoint if you are a PhD student that if you are a manager in a big university. Everyone has these slightly different concerns. But overall, it's clear that the current system is not fit for what is expected from science. It is not fit to allow a professional development of researchers. And therefore it affects the sustainability and the efficiency of the system. There are other things talking about efficiency. Many negative results are not published. Those are essential. There is a group that spent 3, 4, 5, 6 years looking into a research hypothesis that turns out to be negative, and that knowledge is not shared. And that is a waste of time and resources, a huge one. Another team may expend the same amount of time and resources in doing the same thing. Why not is shared? Because they typically do not fit into what is expected of a high GIF publication. Okay, so this is a bit of a summary. I'm sure I'm leaving many elements behind. But the vision of what we are trying to facilitate from the European Commission is to put quality back in the center of assessment practices. As simple as that. A young researcher that has contributed to this process once told me, look, many times I find myself in a situation at the crossroad where I have to decide whether I do something that is good for science, according to my best understanding, or whether I do something that is good for my career. And this contradiction should not happen. That is the goal, to avoid this contradiction. So the vision for this reform movement is precisely that, to put quality and impact in the center of the evaluation system and to make it something that is not only stressing to researchers, there is always some level of competition, but also useful to them and to research managers, etc. I have to say that the scope of this process is not only individual researchers, but also research teams, research organizations, etc. Okay. To provide some context, everything that I have said is not anything new. It has been profusely discussed within the academic community for many years. You can find abundant literature about it, about every single aspect of what I quickly mentioned before, everywhere. There's been many initiatives, mostly from the academic and research community, to try to change this situation, and I am listing here just a few. Most of you will be familiar with the DORA declaration that has been very successful, and that simply, to me, indicates that the community at large agrees with what is said there, that you shouldn't use GIF as a surrogate measure of quality. There is also the Leiden Manifesto for Research Metrics. There is the Hong Kong Principles for Research Assessment, and there is also, and I guess that the next speaker, Professor Boselie, may mention or explain a bit the Dutch initiative, Room for Everyone's Talent, which is a more concrete initiative to actually change things. What is the problem? Well, the problem, despite all this relatively large agreement and all these initiatives, the status quo hasn't changed much, globally speaking, of course. There has been progress in some places to revert this situation, but it's very fragmented, very local, and that is something very bad for an endeavor like science that should be global and have no barriers for mobility, for exchange, etc. And also because in the end, changing all this, it's a very difficult task. I see it as a cultural change. Because it's not only about changing the rules. Of course, you as a funder or the Commission as a funder, you can change the rules. But it's also to try to change the perception of what is valuable by the research community itself. And that is very difficult. That may take years, and that is why I will explain we have been trying to actually bring everyone on board to gain the critical mass that is needed to actually get changes. So this is not a new initiative, as I said, but it's a more concrete call for collective action. So it's not something that is happening at the level of a declaration and a statement, a document that you sign and you can forget about it. What we are really trying to get is to get a commitment to concrete action by everyone involved with research assessment, be it the researchers itself, the organizations, the assessors, the funding agencies, etc. So that is what we think is really different from previous attempts. Now, this is a very boring slide, but I think it's a very important one as well, because this topic is of high interest to the research community. But now, as a bureaucrat, believe me, things are very difficult to change if you don't get the political support as well. And this debate has been climbing or permeating the political agenda, and it has actually become a priority at many levels. Here I mention a few, documents, declarations, etc., signaling this. In particular, I would like to simply comment on the last item on this list, which are the Council conclusions on research assessment and implementation of open science. For those not familiar with the topic, the Council conclusions are issued by the European Council that gathers the ministries of all the different areas of all the member states in the European Union. And in the Council conclusions, they serve to identify topics that are agreed to be of high importance and to try to set objectives and next steps for them. And these Council conclusions are very strong in endorsing the need for reforming research assessment. And again, these commits or are adopted, in other words, by all the member states at the highest level. They validate also very clearly the strategy or the plan put forward by the Commission, and they make a very strong call for open science to be rewarded in assessment practices. If you want maybe a bit for historical reasons, why the Open Science Unit in the Commission is pursuing or is behind that, it is actually because it was pointed out to us by the Open Science Policy Platform, that is an advisory group, that the main obstacle for mainstreaming open science practices is the lack of reward and recognition to open science practices. So that is what a little bit got us into that. Okay, you may say that these are declarations, commitments, etc., but at a more concrete level of implementation in the European Research Area Forum, I remind you, the European Research Area has its main objective to create a single space for research in Europe, allowing free mobility for research innovation. And okay, it has a political agenda for the next 3 years with 20 concrete actions. One of them is the action number 3, which goal is precisely to advance in the reform of research assessment. And it has received a very strong support by member states and also by associated countries and other stakeholders that are represented in this ERA forum. And this brings this, let me call it political action, to a more concrete level, because it has more concrete objectives, briefly mentioned there, which is to perform an analysis of the legal and administrative barriers for the reform, because I was saying before that progress is limited. Why? One of the reasons, and many organizations tell us, is, okay, we would like to go beyond what we are presently doing, but we cannot, because we are limited or constrained by the legal framework where we live, the laws, the administrative laws. So either changes at that level happen to, or we cannot move forward. And the commitment of the member states is precisely to look into that and to try to provide a framework that support the establishment of framework conditions that allow changes. I would like to mention that one of the front runners in these activities has been the Spanish government. They called for a Foro Nacional para la Reforma de la Investigación, which is precisely a forum at the national level with all the relevant stakeholders to discuss that. And if I am not badly informed, I think that the first meeting took place a few weeks ago here in Barcelona. Okay, this is just to say that one should not diminish the importance of having both the community interest and the political interest. This confluence for any topic, not only for research assessment, does not always happen, and this, to me, it signals the right moment to actually take action. Okay, so let me here indicate a little bit what we have been, well, what has been done, not only by us, but as I will explain, this has been a very collective endeavor, indicating a few milestones in time. So during the full year 2021, we at the Commission spent a lot of time having meetings with many different kind of organizations, research organizations, funders, academies, universities, policymakers, managers, etc., to try to, first of all, agree on the rationale for the reform and identify the general principles that should guide it and indicate the way forward. As a result of this long consultation, we published a scoping report in November 2021, and immediately afterwards, we started working in drafting the agreement on reforming research assessment. This was done in collaboration with, well, there were many people involved, as I will explain, but the so-called drafting team involved the Commission, the European University Association, Science Europe, which is an association of funders, and one individual early career researcher that was actually the pen holder. And for us, that was very important that it was an early career researcher taking the lead in drafting. Of course, this was a collective effort. What is the difference between the scoping report and the agreement? Well, the agreement goes to a deeper level of concretion. It actually signals, and I will explain it now, concrete commitments and a concrete time frame for concrete action. So you go from general formulation of what you want to do to a more concrete map. It took us 6 months to have the agreement ready. We published it on July 20th last year. And another element of the agreement is that, okay, it clearly indicates the directions that, or the concrete commitments, but then they need to be developed and put in practice. Because the agreement is very good, some people say, in identifying problems, but it's not so good in giving concrete solutions, like, okay, fine, but how do we do this? And precisely because this is a collective problem, the next step was to set up a coalition bringing as many research organizations as possible precisely to work on that, on the development and to provide guidelines and to provide pilots and concrete actions for change. So these are the different steps. And this coalition is the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, known as the COARA, that was launched in December 2022. Again, I said that it was very important to have everyone's view on this and to have everyone on board from the research community. During the time that we drafted the agreement, we made an open call for anyone interested to contribute and participate to join. And actually, we got a very good feedback. Close to, well, 359 organizations were given the opportunity to have access to the different drafts as we were working, to provide feedback, to give suggestions, etc. So it was a very intensive co-creation exercise. Believe me, I don't know how many meetings we've had about it, countless. And the good thing is that we got a very good engagement, and not only in numbers, but also in diversity, and that is very important. There were many universities, as you would expect, because they're also the most numerous kind of institution probably across Europe. But we also got a very good feedback from funders, public or private ones, from research centers. Many of the big flagships research infrastructure in Europe participated in the debate, from academies and learned societies and association of researchers. Also, evaluation agencies like, ANECA participated in the consultation, also the Italian one, ANVUR, the French one, HCRS, and many others. And also from ministries and regional authorities that are directly involved in assessing. Plus, okay, so this is a bit the composition of the, let me see, okay. Okay, so we finally came up with the agreement. The agreement is a surprisingly brief and comprehensive document for the standards of the Commission. I strongly invite you to read it. It's only 20 pages, and I will try to explain the main elements, but for a more clear scope and purpose of what it said there, it's an easy reading, I really believe, and I encourage you to do so. This is a little bit the structure that it has, of course, an introduction with main motivation. Then it's important, it sets the principles, general overarching principles for what we want to do, and this concerns ethic, integrity, safeguard of academic freedom, etc., etc. And these are taken directly from the scoping report. We did nothing new. They had already been agreed before, so we simply copy-pasted, if you want, into the agreement. Now, probably the substance are the concrete commitments in the agreement. There are 10 of them. Those that are more central are called the course commitments, and then there are 6 supporting commitments. I will explain them next, but like I said, they call for a specific action. And it also includes a time frame, because, okay, the idea is that at some point, okay, you sign the agreement, you eventually join the coalition, but we would expect that, of course, on the basis of self-assessment and on a purely voluntary basis, that you share with the others your plans at the institution level. So. Okay, so what are the 4 core commitments? First of all is, and I will simply read, recognize the diversity of contributions to and careers in research according to the needs and the nature of research. Like I said at the beginning, researchers do, I say in general, there are some specific fields where the kind of activities that researchers naturally do is a bit more limited. I don't know, I'm thinking maybe of pure mathematics. Okay, so maybe there is no need for okay, pure mathematics. I won't delve into the details. But if you go for other disciplines, and I believe the audience here is concerned with them, like public health or biomedical, there the spectrum of things that the good researcher, someone that really contributes to advanced knowledge, can do are very varied, not only publishing. There are people that master setting up a new technique that may not be so leading to publications, but that is crucial for the others to jump on it and profit from it. There is patient care, there are clinical practice. You can inform public policies when needed. We have seen it in the pandemic. We made also from the Commission a very strong call for the research community to help in designing the strategies. And there is also mentoring, there is leadership, there is communication. There are many things. There is peer review. There are many things that are valuable, that really contribute to improve the outcomes of the research that currently are not correspondingly rewarded. The second is to base research assessment primarily on qualitative evaluation. If you want to assess quality and make quality and impact the center of what you really look at, you need qualitative methods. It's a bit of a tautology, but it's unavoidable. This doesn't mean or does not preclude the use of quantitative indicators, because they can be useful and they can complement peer review. And peer review may not be the best way of assessing things in certain contexts. It may need some additional help, or it may be supplemented by additional information. And here there is the full science of scientometrics or bibliometrics, or as you prefer to call it, that can be very useful. The call for this commitment is to make a responsible use of it. What would be an example, and that is given in the agreement, of irresponsible use? One example would be, for instance, to assess the quality of a contribution, whichever it is, based on the venue in which it is published. It is very well established that the journal where you publish is not a good predictor or measure of the quality of what you are publishing, for instance. Or the format, or the language. I was talking before about the problems in social sciences. Many people do not publish locally relevant research in their language because this is not rewarded, but it can be crucial for the problem you want to solve locally. Like I said, well, that is actually the third commitment. I went a little bit too far away. The fourth would be to avoid the use of international rankings in research assessment. This, if you want, is a corollary of the previous commitments because these rankings are informed by metrics that are inappropriate. They are well known to be inappropriate. Moreover, not only that, they don't comply with the principles of openness and transparency. So no one really knows what's inside, and we shouldn't rely on these kind of tools. Of course, you may say that individual researchers are very rarely evaluated by rankings, but institutions at times are. And therefore, the criteria that the rankings impose trickle down to the evaluation of researchers. Then there are 6 commitments that are called support commitments, that they are more of operational nature, if you want, that call for developing new tools, for piloting initiatives, for communicating, for raising awareness across the research community, for allocating resources as needed. So if you want to embark on a journey, you have to prepare the suitcases, these kind of things. And very importantly, to facilitate mutual learning. So that is one of the central roles of the coalition, to bring everyone's experience, the successes, but also the failures, and to share them with the others, to advance together. And of course, a very important point is that the new approaches should be evidence-informed. So whatever you do as new, you can develop a new method for assessing, a new tool, a new criteria. Please look into it, follow the consequences. Is it introducing unintended biases? If so, correct it, etc. Okay, so this, I would say, is the real substance of the agreement. Let me make a few key considerations about it, because this obeys to the most common misunderstandings, in my opinion, about it. First of all, the point is not, the idea is not to replace a system which is rather rigid and limiting by an equally rigid system. It's not the one-size-fits-all. So it is understood that the changes can depend very much on the context. The context can be the country, can be the assessment level. It's not the same evaluating a PhD student at an institution. It can be the discipline. It can be many other things. And of course, on the same note, the agreement is fully respectful of the autonomy of the organizations. So it is understood that every organization, based on its own mission, context, need, a starting point, because as I said before, some have already a little bit advanced, and some others are a little bit lagging behind. So it is understood that the progress can vary from one place to another. Then there's been a little bit of misunderstanding when we talk about diversity. I think what the agreement aims for is diversity in the kind of tasks, roles, and skills that the researchers do that contribute to quality. That is the aim, diversity. But it is aimed, if you wish, at a systemic level. Someone was telling me a few days ago, so okay, now we have in the template form for application, we have to put a box for all of these contributions that you are mentioning. No, please. I mean, the idea is not to ask or to expect that every researcher or every team has to excel or tick boxes everywhere. That would be a disaster and a misunderstanding. It's the other way around. It's when they do it, value it. If they don't do it, maybe they don't do it because it's not fit, it doesn't make sense in the research work. Again, about quantitative indicators, I already mentioned that. The agreement calls for a responsible use, not for abandoning them. Not everything has to be pure peer review from the beginning to the end. Now, the agreement also includes a commitment by the signatories to report on the progress made at 2 different stages, after year 1, after signing the agreement, and in year 5. This reporting has also been a bit misinterpreted, like someone is going to look at it and then tell you if you are doing things well or not, and eventually punish you for that or not. No, that is not the purpose at all. This communication is requested for the sake of transparency and also for sharing lessons. This is a very difficult journey. Many people are skeptic that it can happen. It's actually a cultural change, so we have to advance together. The commitment here is to tell the others where you find yourself and what are your next steps. Also, throughout the agreement, there is a special attention to the involvement of early career researchers in all the process. This is a rather forward-looking movement. It may take years until we see it fully develop, So in a way, it's for everyone, but it's especially important for the next generation. So that is why the agreement calls for early career researchers to be involved at all stages. When you try to set up new methods and when you open up a consultation round at your institution, etc., please bring them on board and listen to what they have to say. Okay, and as I said, the agreement is only the starting point. Oh, by the way, yeah, how many signatories to date? So we are positively surprised. There are to date 465 organizations that have signed the agreement, including 296 universities. Again, it is the most numerous kind of organization, but it's also the most numerous organization at all in Europe. But it's very important that more or less the balance is kept in between universities, research performing organizations, funders. Funders are very important that they are on board because in the end, I mean, they set the conditions for funding, they set the processes, they set the calls. So it's crucial that they are on board, and we have many of them that are interested. There are academies, learned societies, and other. There are also accreditation agencies. I believe that is the 9, which is a very good number if you think that in Europe, in total, at the national level, there are not more than 20 or 30, I believe. So we have almost half of them in there. Okay, I guess I have like 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes. I don't know for how long I have been talking. Indicative. 5 minutes, very good, very good. Okay, a little bit of numbers as well per countries. Well, here you have Spanish organizations. They have signed the agreement in large numbers. We have 45 of them, many universities. There is CRUE, there is CSIC, several Catalan organizations as well. ICREA, maybe sometime. Sorry for that. But the thing, it is perceived as a European initiative, and that is true because the main actors at the beginning were, well, the European Commission, European associations, etc. But the movement is global looking. One of the, so it is open for signature to countries all across the globe. And so far there are a few of them, not too many, but there are a few of them, but the idea is to expand and to enlarge. Of course, because it would be a very bad move if we create a silo where Europe does things in a completely different way as they are done in the rest of the world. That would be very bad for mobility of researchers, and that is a key element to preserve. So, okay, but there is work to do in that direction. Now, about the coalition. The coalition is meant to be a space for collaboration and mutual learning. That is essentially what it is, to support and facilitate the changes, because the specific steps that need to be taken are not defined. And they are not defined for the same reason I gave before, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's each community, in each context, depending on the circumstances, have to find the way that suits them the best to actually carry them out. And here, one of the most important elements of the coalitions will be, as it is set up, the working groups. These are expected to be communities of practices where different universities, funders, associations get together, analyze some of the aspects of assessment in detail, and propose guidelines or come out with conclusions that are useful to all to further changes. It could also serve, this is one of the ideas, we will see how it unrolls, it could also serve to pilot initiatives. Let's say that you have a good idea and you would like to make a few changes in this call to see how it plays out. What are the effects? Of course, the statistical significance of that study would be a lot bigger if you do it in several places at the same time. And you can reach more solid conclusions in that way. So, okay, there are many possibilities. Now it is up to the members of the coalition to actually decide exactly how they want to, in which lines they want to look into more detail. We expect that the call for working group will be launched soon, hopefully within a month or so, so please stay tuned because the COARA organization will launch this call. Then, of course, the structure of the COARA was meant from the beginning to be lean. We didn't want to add bureaucracy or unnecessary steps in all this. We wanted to provide a platform, a space for collaboration on a voluntary basis, based on mutual confidence and of course always respecting the autonomy. And like I said, the COARA is actually global looking and will look for cooperation with like-minded initiatives across the globe. It was launched in December. Just for your information, so several things happened at the Constitutive Assembly. There were the governance documents, there was the appointment of the Secretariat, there were a number of things decided. Probably the most important one was the election of the steering board. There were elections for that. Here you have the names. The chair of the steering board is Rian Letscher, which is the rector of the Maastricht University in the Netherlands. The good thing is that they are very competent people, all of them, and very strongly committed to this change. But I would like to highlight another thing is, again, and this came out naturally as a result of the election, is that the composition is very diverse. There are people that were endorsed or presented by universities, but there are people representing research centers, academies and association of young researchers, early career researchers. There are 2 funders in the steering board. This is very important. There is one accreditation agency, the Italian ANVUR is represented in the person of Menico Rizzi, and there are others. So it is a very diverse and very competent steering board that will be setting out the next steps. Now, from the point of view of the Commission, we decided another critique that we have received often is that this is a top-down movement that does not respect the autonomy of organizations. I think I highlighted sufficiently that that is not the case, that we consulted to absolutely everyone. We have been playing the role of facilitators of the process because the Commission is in a unique position to actually gather a large community around it because we have the means. But we never meant to be impositive. So we decided to just participate in the COARA as every other organization. In the end, here we wear 2 different hats. The Commission is a policy-making body, but it's also a funder for research and innovation. So in our quality of funder for research and innovation, we signed the agreement, and we are members, and we will participate and be as active as possible in the work of the coalition. We will, of course, also provide financial support via Horizon Europe to the operations of the coalition to make sure that they have the means to work. If a working group calls for an in-depth study on something to get a better understanding, okay, we will be providing many other things. But of course, there are other elements in the reform. So the base or the bottom is represented by the COARA. But like I said at the beginning, the top to bottom support is also important. If you don't have the cooperation of the national authorities, you are not going to go that far as if you do. The main place for the national authorities to discuss and advance on this, as I explained before, is the ERA Forum. So we expect to play an important role in liaising the reflections, the conclusions, and the needs of the COARA to member states as represented in the ERA Forum to coordinate and facilitate that dialogue so that the reflections reach in one place, we make sure that they are heard in the other place. There is also, like I said, the important international component. Again, here the Commission is in a good position to facilitate the dialogue. We have been talking recently to the Japanese government because they were attracted or interested in this initiative. We participate in the Global Research Council, and in many other fora because we continuously discuss scientific and technology agreements with many countries, so we can always bring that into the agenda, present it, explain it, discuss it, etc., to make sure that it is understood outside of Europe. Of course, we will also look for synergies with other policy initiatives, like the university alliances, the European Open Science Cloud, Open Research Europe. There are other many policy files which can contribute to the COARA and vice versa, so we will try to play a role there. And of course, as a funder and a signatory, we have committed to continuously reflect on our own evaluation processes. You know, the European Commission has a very substantial framework program to fund research and innovation, and we have actually we already are critically looking into the dead angles, things that are not fine, things that could be improved, etc. And we will keep doing that. Okay, I think it's a good moment for me to shut up. But before doing that, yeah, because I was going to explain that in a little bit more of detail, but that is part of our commitments, how we are trying to mainstream all this in our funding program. Just, I wanted to say that I have focused here only on research assessment, which is a key driver for mainstreaming open science. We have many reports, many studies, many surveys indicating that without the adequate rewards for open science practices, they will never happen. But you have to work at many levels. You have to make it required, you have to make it rewarding, and that is the main topic of this talk today, but you have to make it normative, easy, and possible. There are many things to do, not only at the rewards level, to actually increase the uptake of open science and make it the new norm in research work. And we have many different initiatives that I can comment on them if you wish during the questions. With this, I will thank you very much for your attention and encourage you to read the agreement and to participate at the level that you can in this important, we think important at least, movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I have a question because you mentioned that nowadays evaluation is mainly focused on publications and impact factor, etc. But at senior levels, I think that projects and funding are also very much taken into account. So in this sense, I would like to, if you could go deeper in how do you think the European Commission, for instance, is going to change the evaluation of research proposals to take this into account, no? In the sense that also the need to obtain funding makes you make research in a particular way, no? So can you explain a little bit about this?
I'm not sure if I understood. You mentioned other things like projects and grants, etc., the role they play in evaluation practices. Is that correct? Yeah, in the agreement, that is why I advise reading it. It says that one of the examples that it gives as inappropriate use of quantitative indicators is precisely that one. Not only counting the citations, for instance, but also counting grants or patents or the amount of funding that you have secured on previous calls. So relying on this, simply counting as a tool to assess quality is deemed incorrect. That is what the agreement says. I don't know if that actually answers your question, I'm not sure. Yeah?
It's thinking about also changing the way that research proposals are evaluated because, so can you explain a little bit in which changes are going to be implemented?
Well, we are reflecting on it, like I said. Over the last years, we have made a few changes. For instance, as if you're familiar with our projects, they are typically evaluated along 3 pillars, so excellence, quality, and efficiency. So first of all, a few years ago, what it was requested to applicants was a list of publications only. I don't know if you remember that, but that was the case. Now that has been changed to request to applicants the list of publications, software, data, or any other relevant contributions that they do or that they have done in the research, along with a qualitative assessment of why they are important. Okay, so these are little changes that we have already introduced. Here you have a few others. We also explicitly ask about the open science practices. I mean, what they plan to do with the research outputs that they generate, how they plan to manage them, and they are also taken into account in the quality criterion. So these are small changes that we have been doing over the past years, but we will keep reflecting on them. I think that to some extent we are relatively, well, the Commission has signed DORA, so journal impact factors are not requested or are not part of the discussion and evaluation since already a few years ago. So we are taking little steps in this direction. I don't know if they are satisfactory. Also think that it's difficult. The European Commission is a bit of a transatlantic that to make a little turn, it takes quite a bit because it's heavy. So okay, the commitment is there and we will keep thinking, of course.
Hi, I'm Enric Valduvi, Vice Director for Research here at UPF. Thanks for the talk. It's very interesting. I followed the whole development quite closely. A bit closer, like this. And I wasn't gonna ask this, but but then you said something now that made me think I should. We were used to thinking about journal-based indicators and author-based indicators. In the lengthy discussion over the agreement, this publication-based indicator concept came up. In one of the meetings, I said, well, what's wrong with the age index for authors? And I was told all aggregate indicators are wrong, are evil, in the meeting. I mean, that was a personal opinion, of course. But and then you said, let's not count citations when you responded to the other person. And I was wondering, what do you mean by that? And because, you know, counting whether someone is well cited or not is, for me, very different from looking at journal impact factors. So just a little bit.
No, you're right. I missed the word. Do not count, do not only count citations.
What
So
about publication-based?
what the agreement says is journal-based metrics are of no use to assess quality at all, in any context. Author-based metrics can be useful, but do not use them, rely only on them to make a qualitative assessment. So they can inform the decision. H-index is an example. Then, of course, it has its limitations and biases, and the call is to actually be aware of them. And
we know the flaws of the
I missed the word. Do not use only citations.
Okay, great. Thank you. And this concept, publication-based indicators as opposed to journal-based or author-based, is there a nuance there that...
Well, journal-based are related not to the performance or metrics of the journal or venue at large.
And publication-based, I mean...
At the author level. It's author level versus journal level.
Okay, so it's a renaming of the old
if you wish.
author-based. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
But you know that we fought for every word in that agreement.
I was there online, of course, but...
So you are a good witness that...
And we are part of a university association, the Guild, which took a very active part in introducing some of those terms like the ones that qualify, you know, what's the term, unmotivated or
inappropriate.
Inappropriate.
There was a lot of fight for that word too.
Yes. And we haven't signed, just for information, the agreement as a university, but we are part of a European university, Utopia, which has signed. So our ears and eyes in that are through the alliance.
No, thank you. Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't want to come here to bully anyone into signing. And many people can make a lot of progress without signing. And as you said, many opt to go for umbrella organizations to be represented there, which is also fine. So the signature is more a declaration or a statement towards your own community. Then if you find it useful to work in the coalition, depending on how it unfolds, the kind of activities that take place there. And if you are interested to actually go there, participate and attend, of course, then you would need to sign because it's a prerequisite. But it's perfectly...
Since we had information about ICREA, I just wanted to be open about our situation.
No, please, don't mind my silly jokes. I said respect to the autonomy of organizations as a very, very important principle, if not the most.
One last question for the sake of time.
Hola, Javier.
Hola, Marta.
Marta, Agustinho, you live. It's more of a comment because I've been involved with your team as well in the reform of in the assessment and in COARA, and as a reflection of someone who represents the scientific community in all these political aspects, I really want to make it public the incredible role that your unit, the unit that Costas Glinus and you and Jean Manuel and all the colleagues did in this, because I mean, this is really a nice story, but it was really a co-creation moment, and I think your talk here today shows how important it is to have bureaucrats who understand about science in their role. So I think this is really important to say, because it's not happening all the time, okay? So my question now is, so COARA is really a top-down and bottom-up combination, and I think the European Commission should continue to have a critical role in the reform of the research assessment, especially in terms of the globalization of the reform of the research assessment across the world. Can you elaborate on your plans on that?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for your kind comment. And second, well, elaborate. We are very committed to it. This is a sketch of different elements. Specifically about global alignment, like I said, probably the most efficient mechanism we have to raise awareness is through our participation in the many international fora where we are represented and where we can always suggest or bring topics up in the agenda for discussion. That is the main mechanism there. Then we also treat country by country, region by region. Now we are working very closely, for instance, just to give you an indication on cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean. There is a joint report on the topic being written by experts. There will be a conference calling at the ministerial level, etc., to discuss on the topic open science at large with very, very important angle on research assessment as well. So that is a little bit the means that we have through science diplomacy at large. Now, about the specific things, there is not we don't have yet a clearly defined plan of where exactly we want to be in 2-3 years from now. We are testing a little bit the ground, raising awareness and bringing up in the agenda with our partners. Yeah, but I cannot give you anything more concrete. We are.
Thank you, Javier. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, my name is Robert Castelo. I'm Associate Professor and Vice Chair of the Department of Medicine and Life Sciences here at Universitat Pompeu Fabra. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Paul Boselie. He's a full professor in the Utrecht School of Governance of Utrecht University in the Netherlands. He's head of the department at this School of Governance and chair of the Utrecht University Recognition and Rewards program since 2019. The Utrecht University School of Governance is a leading department in public administration and organization science with around 150 colleagues. His research and teaching is focused on management, organization studies, leadership, and human resource management in public services organizations. Paul supervises multiple PhD projects within hospitals, higher education, courts, and national government. He is also well known for an interview he had in the journal Nature, where he was explaining how Utrecht University was removing the research assessment, the use of impact factors altogether, which sparked quite some discussion in social media. And he's currently working on a new edition of his textbook, Strategic Human Resource Management, A Balanced Approach, and a book on talent management in higher education. Thanks, Paul, for coming, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you for the invitation and the kind words. I'm very pleased to give a keynote speech here on one of my favorite topics, the recognition and rewards transformation in open science. What I'll try to do in about 30 minutes, and hopefully you'll keep track of time because I'm not a very good time manager. So when the front row starts doing this, it means they have to end. If the back says this, then this says something about the quality of my presentation. I'm from Utrecht University, but I'm not going to tell a story about Utrecht in itself. I'm going to talk about open science and recognition and rewards and the transformation. So a focus on change from an international point of view, a Dutch national point of view, and our Utrecht University point of view. So actually, I think our both presentations fit well together. There's some overlap in it. Utrecht University, as a start, is a broad university. It means it covers multiple disciplines like sciences, medicine, but also humanities, social science, etc. So it means that it also affects our nature, and we started applying a strategy focused on multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approaches more than 10 years ago. And that in itself has also affected the way we look at open science and recognition and rewards. We do a lot of cooperation beyond the borders, and that has affected us. The other thing I would like to stress is we are a research and a teaching institute. It means that in our model and the things I'm going to present today, there's not only an emphasis on research, but also on the other aspects and the domains we cover in our institute. So for example, we don't talk anymore about early career researchers, we talk about early career academics. Because in itself, it's much more than that. We also found out that the term sciences and science is a bit tricky from a humanities point of view. So we are very sensitive given the nature of our own background. Now, if I push this button, oh, yes. Now what's, I'm not going to say a lot about the why questions. I've been involved in this project and in open science and recognition and rewards for 4 years now in this role as chair of recognition and rewards at Utrecht University. So I'm not going to say too much about why there's a change. Javier already explained a lot about it, but I'm going to focus more on the how and the what and what we're trying to do. And part of it is, you might say, is a dream. It's not reality yet, but we are on the move within our university, within our country, but also globally. It means that there are also struggles, there are also critiques, even within my own university, on a daily basis almost. And we try to cover that and take that into account as part of the transformation. Now let's say the year 2000, academia worldwide went out of balance. I say 2000, could be another year. The focus was, at the moment, is now very much on the individual, little or no attention for the collective, the team, the organization, the scholar, and little or not on the support staff, for example. And in our case, more and more we find out that the nature of our work demands for positions, functions that are hybrid positions. So for example, in sciences and engineering and medicine, we have kind of a new type of work, data engineers, and they do not fit the traditional model of the scientific staff or the support staff. So while our model is very much focused on the scholar, and research has all the emphasis, while the recognition and rewards transformation also makes a plea for a more balanced approach and a multidimensional approach. It's not just about research, it's also about education, impact, academic leadership, and patient care. And the patient care component, let's say a little bit about that, also relates to the fact that medical centers are involved in the model. As mentioned, there was a wind of change. I had the opportunity to give an interview on behalf of Utrecht University, my role as chair, on the journal impact factor. And in Nature, and I didn't expect a lot of feedback on that, but the fact it was in Nature, it led to a sort of eruption of comments, in particular on social media. And to much of a surprise, I mean, we signed the dollar declaration years before this interview, and if you sign a declaration, you kind of commit yourself to be very critical about the use of a journal impact factor, in particular if you use it for HRM purposes like recruitment, selection, appraisal, and promotion. Now, but there was a huge storm. Now, why did we write this article, or why did we participate in the interview? It had, in particular, internal purposes, because if you shout it out loud, it can also affect your own community in your statement that we are on the move. Now, as Javier was saying, the scientific evidence shows that the journal impact factor and the H index are poor indicators for HRM purposes. But also, we had signed DORA, so from a rational analytical point of view, but also from a social legitimacy point of view, we find it extremely important to make a statement that we are changing. It was just a token in a way, but it led to an eruption in so more than 4 million views. And what was a big surprise that we could monitor the social media, because we have a marketing and communication department that actually monitors what happened. And overall, a far majority of responses worldwide were positive. There were a lot of neutral reactions, like just reply or just without any comment. And there was a minority of very critical responses, in particular from the Netherlands itself. So within a couple of weeks, we were kind of surprised, because there was a letter published in a journal called Science Guide. It's a Dutch journal, and it was with I think 174 professors who made a statement: this is going in the wrong direction, this will damage the reputation of the Netherlands, and all kind of arguments that we're on the wrong track. It was interesting to see that the majority of the people who signed this letter came from sciences, engineering, and medicine. We did an analysis on that as well. There were 150 of them were full professors, the others were associate professors, and the far majority was male. So just for the record, and we didn't look at the age, but I had the impression they had the color of my hair. And and we had already made up a strategy what to do if there are critical responses. And so we had a communication strategy, because we're working on this as a team. We had already decided before this happened, we are not going to do anything, because we have already made our statement. And then the unbelievable thing happened. 1 week later, there was another letter signed by almost 400 early career academics who are kind of opposing this letter of the seniors, the big oaks, as we call them in the Netherlands. And there was a lively debate. And I think this was a wonderful thing where you can share that people were worried, people were critical. And that's a good thing, to hear both sides. And in particular, to hear the next generation of early career academics who also had a voice, who also raised their concerns. For example, the concern of, yeah, but we're in between two worlds. How are we going to cope with that? We're part of we're still in the old world, and you're suggesting a new world that hasn't really been accepted by everyone. See the first letter. So it was a lively debate. I can tell many stories about that, what happened, because this also led to political debates on the national level, because the first level letter also included, for example, a Nobel Prize winner. So it made a huge impact up to the level of The Hague of our politics. They made a committee at the political level to study whether there were any suggestion that it would damage the international reputation. The committee has recently published a report, and it's a very positive report, stating there is absolutely no reason for worrying about whether it's going to damage our reputation in any sense. This is part of a transformation that goes beyond the Netherlands. Now, Javier was already saying, I'm not going to say too much about it, but this is an international development. This is a global development, not just a European development. We see also a lot of attention from outside of Europe. And these are the Quara, DORA, and on national level, I'll say a little bit about that. You see these developments, and these are developments of what I call strategic and institutional alliances and networks and coalitions, and these are extremely important for several reasons. For legitimacy, for making a statement, but also in the end, for research assessment, look at the European Union and in the end how a research assessment will lead to new grant application formats. I have the impression that we've reached a tipping point. That means that this movement will go forward one way or another. And it's also supported by, I think, Javier's data of the number of universities and institutes have signed several declarations. But the political context, I fully agree with Javier on that, is important because you cannot do it on your own. Now, I want to say a little bit about, tell you a little bit about the Dutch transformation that started with a position paper in 2019. Rianne Letschert, who's now chairing COARA, was one of the initiators of this project in the Netherlands, and it resulted in an open access position paper that you can all read, called Room for Everyone's Talent. And the focus of the paper is very much on diversification and dynamic career paths, focus on quality instead of quantity, achieving the right balance between the individual and the collective part, stimulating academic leadership and open science. And the key areas are education, research, impact leadership, and again, patient care because of the medical centers that are involved. Now, this also relates to my own field of interest and expertise in management, leadership, and human resource management. I've been a PhD student, a postdoc researcher. I've gone through the whole pipeline of academia. I have made myself guilty on using the H index and the journal impact factor to build my own career. So I have to be honest about that. But I've also seen what it can do and how it can harm people around you, and in particular frustrate people, and how it can lead to even serious fraud and incident. I used to be an assistant professor at Tilburg University at the time when Diederik Stapel had this huge fraud of data manipulation. So I've seen what it can do with individuals, with colleagues, with an institute, etc. Now, what is also important for this position paper, that this position paper of 2019 was fully supported by the main 5 institutes. The Dutch Employers Association for Universities, the Dutch Employers Association for University Medical Centers, the Royal Dutch Academy, Dutch Research Funding, MWO, Dutch Medical Research Funding, ZON, MW. So the institutes were fully supporting this new roadmap. And all the universities in the Netherlands have signed this sort of declaration. And from that moment on, we have created a national platform where every university has a chair or multiple chairs who are interacting and meet each other on a regular basis. So I'm representing Utrecht University, and we meet every 6 to 8 weeks, and we share a lot of our experiences. If we go to Utrecht University, recognition and rewards is part of the Open Science program that started in 2018. And our program, the Open Science program in itself, consists of 5 domains: public engagement, recognition and rewards, open access, fair data and software, and open education. And what we try to do is working together towards a better world, and we are very much focused on the big societal challenges that we're confronted with. This also relates to the nature of our work. We have built strategic themes, research themes, 4 of them in Utrecht, and a lot of the funding nowadays goes to these interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary research themes. And this creates a lot of cooperation across borders and also demands and requires a different approach. Open science is part of our strategic plan of the Utrecht University. We have several reasons for doing that. This is our rector, Magnificus Hem Kummeling. He's in the middle, because and he's completely supporting the whole stream. Once he stated, we are not on this academic world to increase our H index or publish as much as possible in high impact journals. We want to contribute to better understanding of big societal challenges and solutions for the big societal challenges we are facing at the moment. So that requires an approach that we don't want a single focus on research. We don't want one-trick ponies, and I'm going to tell a little bit about that we don't want sheep with 5 legs. I understand that that is not an official name for it, but I'll try to explain. Although there are really sheep with 5 and even 6 legs. They do exist in practice, but I don't think the expression really counts. But we use it in recognition and rewards. As you can see, we use a lot of visualizations, and I already expressed to you that in the change process, we are inspired a lot by evidence-based practice, but also by insights from media, communication, organizational change, and also visualization. So what we try to do is use as much as possible what we call infographics. And what we found out is that they are very helpful in the debate. So whenever we go to workshops or training sessions or presentations, we use these, in Dutch we call it praatplaten. We cannot translate it, but it means like something like it's a talk slide. But an infographic, and it will stimulate debates because we are very much visualized in the way we approach things. Now, this is also the past and the future, hopefully. So much more focus on different domain, not just research, for example, to build a career, etc. The team effort, you see these little puppets with different kind of t-shirts. It means that you have a possibility of combining different tasks, and these combination of tasks, they can actually change over time. And this is highly related to the concept of sustained employability. Sustained employability means that you build a career that you can actually move around, that you're not just in one track, but that you can combine different tasks. So in my case, I started as a PhD student, was a postdoc researcher. I was lucky to be in a department where they had the statement that also postdocs should need some time to do teaching experience. So I had 1 day of teaching experience in my postdoc position. So I could learn how to supervise a master thesis. I could also learn how to develop a bachelor course, etc. And you can diversify over time. Nowadays, I'm the head of department. So it takes me about 4 days a week to do the management and administration of such a big organization. Some of you might have the same experience. I'm very lucky because I can quit this position on the 1st of September, and I'm looking forward to that because leadership is nice, but I'm eager to focus on research and teaching again. So you can diversify, and that also relates to the possibility that you can have diversification within your team. For doing so, we found out that you need some kind of, something that people can read. And so we developed in 2021 at Utrecht University, we developed a vision. It's also publicly available on our website, and including a model. We call it the triple model. And triple consists of team, research, impact, professional performance, leadership, and education. We put team, the collective first, deliberately, not just to create triple. You can imagine that it took us almost a week to come up with such a model and to the abbreviation, because it had to include all the elements of open science and recognition and reward. The professional performance is a translation of patient care, because we have a medical center, but we also have other disciplines that have similar kind of additional positions or functions. And the colors are in the colors of Utrecht University. It's all aligned, it's all thought of. Now, education, research, and professional performance are the key domains. Impact is not just an outcome. We decided quite early that impact is much more than valorization. We avoid the term valorization because it's too simplistic, economically focused. Impact has many faces. So it's multidimensional, and impact is also a way of working. It's not just an outcome, it's also how we co-create. We have community-engaged learning nowadays. We have public engagement in our research projects. So impact is an integral part of research, education, and professional performance as we try to apply it. And leadership and team spirit are actually the building blocks of the model. This is a bit the roadmap we have gone through. So you have the rooms for everyone's talent, the national developments. Before that, we started with our strategy at Utrecht University on open science. Open mind, open attitude, open science was the new strategy developed in 2000. Later on came the triple model, and now we're very much focused on leadership and leadership development in our project. So what is important, I think, is a vision, a mission, and strategy. It's part of that strategy, so it's not a silo in itself. Team spirit, leadership at all levels, hands-on and value-driven. It's the key to your success. And it's all about support and academic staff. And we're also having debates already within the university, and I expect that we will come to a decision to abandon the distinction between support staff and academic staff this year. So probably this year we will have a new label called university staff, and everybody will be on the same, within the same level. So this is going to be a major transition, and it is possible, also from a legal point of view. So we're working on that. Maybe radical, revolutionary, but it is possible. I fully agree that this is a culture change. And just to show you a little bit where we are right now, we're very much focused on leadership at the moment. We have a pipeline leadership model at Utrecht University, and it's linked to recruitment and selection, but also linked to our development programs. If you want to know more about it, it's also on our website. And it's focused very much on personal leadership. As a management scholar, I don't think personal leadership really exists, because you cannot lead yourself, but it's kind of a nice phrase, personal leadership. But this is very much about you, self-reflection, a clear communication, etc. Then you have the second one. It builds, in a way, it's a sort of organizational leadership. This is when you start managing a team, when you're a principal investigator and you have PhD students, postdocs, probably when you start leading a unit. So then it's important that you have capabilities and knowledge of collaboration, reinforcing the culture of improvement, encouraging development, and be results-oriented. And then at the more strategic level, for example, when you become a research director, when you become a head of department, or a dean or vice dean, then it's a more strategic leadership that requires setting objectives, realizing objectives, linking to the organization, and taking responsibility for the bigger picture. What we are doing at the moment is include recognition and rewards transformation in all the leadership programs. So in every leadership program that we already have within the Utrecht University, we have incorporated workshops on recognition and rewards in open science. And on top of that, we have developed a 2-day workshop, recognition and rewards. And the aim is that all the managers, support staff, and academic staff will participate in that workshop in the next 3 years. That's a model that we have copied from our medical hospital, has done that in their leadership and organizational culture program. We've learned from that, and we think it's very important to actually offer that to all the managers and leaders of the university. And it's about, in our case, we calculate 600 managers and leaders that will go through this program in the next 3 years. And we've already started last year, and so it's on the move. Now, the other thing is the open science program, and it's very important, I think, is that we have a project organization to fully support this. So it's at university level, we have a project team. So the university in itself has paid a lot of money into staff, project organization, to support this program. So in my role, for example, I get 1 day a week to fully dedicate to recognition and rewards. It's not that I do something on top of it. It's just actually, it's part of my task and part of my position. And what the next step that we have made is the creation of so-called FOSTs, faculty open science teams. So every faculty within our university now has a team that exists of open science people from within the faculty, in particular early career academics who participate in that represent the different elements of open science, including recognition and rewards, and together with their dean, they're now translating the whole transformation to their specific context, and they're already operating. So they meet on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, and I will give you some examples what they are doing. So we are implementing and we are acting upon that. Now, a couple of underlying principles. So a vision, I think, is very important, persuasion. Full support by the university board and the deans. One of the things that I asked when I started was that I'm willing to do this recognition and rewards transformation, but only if along the way I get the full signed support of the university board and all the deans of the university. And they all signed. So now I can always say to people, yeah, you have to go to your dean or you have to go to the university board. This is our policy. This is very important. Otherwise, people can go their own way. It's very open. So capacity for a project organization. Another principle is try to build on your own strengths. So we try to avoid hiding people from outside. One of my philosophies is use untapped resources. If I look at a room like this, I'm convinced that there are a lot of untapped resources within this room that could help in the transformation process. And this is what we actually applied. So we have asked a lot of people, do you know somebody who's enthusiastic, who wants to do something completely different? They want to get involved, and we make use of that. We have the FOST and the fellows on the faculty level. Practice what you preach. So for example, we have a working group recognition and rewards that meets on every 6 weeks. And we're up to the point that there is support staff and there's academic staff involved in the working group. And just before summer, this was a moment where I was personally very proud of. We had a physical meeting with the working group, and there were new members of the group, and we had to actually tell who we were. And at that moment, nobody told their position. So I said, I'm Paul Boselie, I'm chairing here. And somebody else said nobody knew who was faculty and nobody knew who was support. And that was a very important moment, practice what you preach, because as soon as I say I'm Paul Boselie, I'm a full professor, blah, blah, then I already have the status, reputation, and the unintended kind of signal and symbolic implications on. This is not what we want. So this is kind of nice, and it also helps to stimulate involvement. Room for experiments, it's very important. So there's a lot of leeway for different experiments, and I'll give some examples. Employee involvement is the key. Leadership development talked about strong cooperation with the HRM domain, because they more and more in the transformation process, it's up to them, because I cannot deal with the working group and the task force. I cannot deal with all the issues that emerge within such a big university. And a communication strategy is extremely important, so we also have communication on board. Now, this is a bit how we work. It's a top-down, bottom-up approach where the different levels are connected through leadership, to employee involvement, to FOST fellows and deans, our working group at the Utrecht University level, the national level where I participate as representative for the university, and also straightforward connections to, for example, the Coalition of the Willing, COARA, etc. And the interaction between them is important as well. Now, some of the potential success factors is a bit of our own philosophy. Try building on your internal strengths, so untapped resources. The first co-chair that we had for recognition and rewards was Marika Adriaanse, who was an associate professor in social sciences, and she co-chaired recognition and rewards with me. She fully developed, and last year she jumped to Leiden University, where she became a full professor. And then you have to be very proud, because you lose a huge talent, but on the other hand, somebody makes a career move from an associate professor to full professor, and she's now leading, together with Sarah de Rijke, the recognition and rewards program at Leiden University. So, and there are several of those examples. We have assistant professors, Reina van der Wal, Martijn Huismans, who have been involved for a while now, and it's early career academics. They bring a lot of energy, good ideas, and it's very good for their career. Both of them are up for a senior position, not because of their publications or their impact factor, but in particular because of the way they engage in these programs. And the deans who are responsible for that acknowledge that. And so both of them are hopefully going to be promoted to associate professor within the next year. Co-opetition is one of my favorite concepts. So I've done some research on that. Why do sometimes organizations work together when they are competitors? And that's a fascinating area. And you see it in tech business. We see it also public-private cooperations. I think this could be one of our successful success factors in building coalitions, that you cooperate with competitors because the challenge is way too big for an individual organization or unit to cope with. So you get together, and then together you can build an argument. Personally, I think that this also could create a competitive advantage between continents. I think what is happening right now, it could also mean that we can compete with American universities that often have a much larger budget. If we work together and we build on a different framework, it could also benefit not only the world, but also strengthen our position. It's important to link these kind of developments to your strategy, because otherwise it's going to be a stand-alone. So alignment and fit are very important, and again, the full support by your board. Now these are just some examples how you can use the media. We use Dutch newspapers, international newspapers to spread the message, in particular for internal purposes, but also for external purpose. But we also stimulate our own working group members to do this. So Reiner van der Wal is this assistant professor who participated in one of the articles. Stans de Haas is my co-chair at the moment. She did as well. So there are, and because this is not a Paul Boselie thing. If I'm gone, it should move on. So it should have a legitimacy by the collective, and this is also important for showing different faces with people from different backgrounds. Now, just a small quiz. I like metaphors in animals, and I'm trying to collect as much as possible. Do you recognize any of these metaphors in academia? Who? One-trick pony, very good. Yeah, I couldn't find a pony, so if anybody on Google has a very nice picture about the one-trick pony, I would love to have that. Yeah, the other thing? Sorry, the? Yeah, the elephant in the room. There are a lot of elephants in the room. Rat races, very good. Yeah, the sheep with 5 legs, that's going to be a new metaphor, and the top dog. If you have any other metaphors of animals, please send them to me. I collect them. I use them for other purposes. But you can use them as well. I mean, if you talk about, can we talk about the elephants in the room? And there are huge elephants in the room. To give you an example, in the Netherlands, when the Dutch government about 25 years ago decided that every PhD delivered, every promotion delivered, will get a bonus of about 100,000 euros for the university. Now, you probably can imagine what's happening if you give a bonus or to a promotion. So the number of PhD students doubled in 20 years' time. The medical school and the sciences faculty at this moment in Utrecht they have about 1,800 PhD students. Humanities has about 60. So it has become a business model. That's a big elephant in the room. It has become a business model even for positions and tasks, etc. Now this is very tricky. Another elephant in the room, Javier already talked about a little bit, is the use of rankings. Times Higher Education is a private company owned by private equity. If you don't know what private equity is, Google it a little bit. But most of the time, private equity is only in for the money. So it's not transparent. It's a business model. I think it costs about 80,000 euros a year for a university to connect to Times Higher Education, to deliver indicators, and they come up with a sort of ranking. So our reputation is linked to a private company that earns money out of it, that makes money out of it. So we can have high rankings. Utrecht University is reasonably high ranked to attract students and the best employees. It's a pretty sick model. It's an elephant in the room. We are probably gonna build some kind of strategy to point that out. Now, a couple of examples. This is the professor of science, the Dean of Sciences, Isabel Arends, and she and her team have come up with a completely different profile for full professorship at her sciences, with a lot of emphasis on academic leadership. So without any academic leadership experience and potential, you will not become a professor anymore within sciences in Utrecht University. So it's a major transition. You can have, yeah, I've asked Isabel, and what if that person is going to win a Nobel Prize? This was a bit quiet, so I'm not sure whether that it will count for everybody, but the system is changing. This is a recently developed career profile by the medical school within our academic hospital, where they have 6 different profiles for researchers with different accents. I think there's a lot of material available on the website as well, and I'm more than happy to send you the PowerPoint slides, just to give you as an example of. Last week I was at the Children's Hospital, also part of the academic hospital, and they have developed themselves what they call iProud. It's a personal development tool, and it's very much focused on filling your own profile and ambitions, a focus on development, and not aimed at excellence on all domains, because one of the things that early career academics are very much worried about is the sheep with 5 legs, that you have to be excellent in all the domains. What they built in iProud was that you have the possibility to see all the domains, but you cannot fill them in excellent in, so you have to make a decision. So it forces you to make decisions about your tasks and your ambitions. But this is an example, and they are going to work with it, focused on diversification and vitalization of career paths. We also have a veterinary medicine faculty with Debbie Jaarsma as a dean, and they have also come up with different career paths. They have developed their own workshops within the faculty. The patient care in their area is very much focused, obviously, on animal care. So they have people working there that are not purely the scientists, researchers, or the teachers, but something in between. So for them, it gives a lot of leeway, and teamwork in itself is a major importance. You see, the people smile as well, so apparently they're happy. I'm almost finished. What we try to do is provide a lot of information according to the open science principle, so open access as possible. So infographics are available on our website. Video material, we've recently published 3 videos, for example, with Naomi Elmers. She's a famous social psychologist professor, and she talks about her team and how she is experimenting with recognition and rewards and teamwork. We have this, what we call tough questions, honest answers. So whenever we are confronted with a very difficult question, we try to put it on the website and we try to give an answer. And often we say, yeah, we're not sure. So for example, the tough question of the last couple of weeks is the debate in the Netherlands about, it's called everybody professor. So it's, the question is, why shouldn't everybody from the level of assistant professor shouldn't be called a full professor? And in the Netherlands, we have a clear distinction. UD is assistant professor, UHD, associate professor, and a full professor. And there are some privileges linked to the full professor that are linked to that as well. I don't know the answer, but I think it's part of the development, and it's a good question. I don't know the answer yet. Now, free information of documents, sharing good practices. What we try to do is map these practices. We use that as well. So somebody comes from humanities and says, yeah, Paul, it's very interesting, but this does not apply to us. We are completely different. And I say, yeah, but go to your neighbor, Daniel Konitz. He's head of department of one of the departments of humanities. He's doing it. So go to him, and he is more than willing to share his experiences. This also helps on a shop floor level to convince people. And I had a nice example last week from social sciences, where 2 departments were very positive about the new introductions. And there was a third one, I can call it here because they're not here anyway. Sociology said, no, we're not going to do that. But as soon as they heard that the other 2 departments were willing and able, then they, a week later, say, yeah, we're going to participate in it as well. So it helps when you have good examples and you can work with that. Now, this is the final slide. Pitfalls. So this may look like a nice kind of story, but we've been working on it for 4 years already, and sometimes I get a little bit tired because you have to repeat a lot of the things that we've been saying, let's say 2, 3 years ago. But organizational and sectoral changes take time. So endurance is very important. Do not underestimate politics and power, so the culture and symbolics. So what I've learned myself, I have a background in public administration, so I'm a little bit sensitive for it, but in reality it is, whenever there are tough debates, often it's going to be about power, resources, and reputation. So you have to keep that in mind. Do not always mention it explicitly, but keep it in mind that as soon as you get in a real tough debate, you say, well, all the evidence is against it. If that is the case, if all evidence is against it, then you're pretty sure that it's about power, resources, financial resources, and reputation, or a combination of it. And then you have to sometimes be a bit quiet, sometimes make a joke, but this is part of the transformation. Not all the strategic choices are evidence-based. I find that tough. So some of the choices we make are evidence-based, but others are more of a belief. And that's very difficult also because somebody else might have a different opinion. And there should be room in the dialogue for that. Now, and one of my fascinations that I would like to give back to you as well is we're in the core business of knowledge creation and knowledge sharing. So in research and teaching, developing our PhD students, and we are very good at it, I think. However, apply it to ourselves and it becomes very challenging. So as soon as we start talking about ourselves, it's difficult. And this is going to be part of the transformation. I do sometimes executive training for full professors, and then the first 2 hours we talk about all kind of issues. We talk about something and they're very good at it, and then after 1.5 hours or 2 hours say, okay, but what are you going to do about it? And then it becomes very quiet. And it's exactly the point is as soon as you are going to be in charge and you're going to be asked, what can you do about it? Then it's tough. And this applies to almost every sector, but it's something also that we have to take into account. To continue, or to finalize my presentation is, I think it's very important to continue the dialogue because it, like Javier was saying, it's going to take a couple of years before we have the full transformation implementation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Paul, for this very inspiring story and journey of Utrecht University towards open science and research assessment. I think many now agree that we need to move away from journal impact factors, but sometimes I have the worry that, okay, we don't talk anymore about journal impact factor, but we developed a sort of implicit bias towards impact factors. So based on your experience, what would be your suggestions to avoid this in, for example, in panels that evaluate researchers?
Yeah, that's the category tough questions. A couple of answers. On an institutional level, in the Netherlands, we have made a development. We had the standard evaluation protocol. That was the standard assessment for all institutes in the Netherlands. Now the S has been changed to strategy. So instead of standard, it now has become strategic evaluation protocol. Now the strategy refers to 2 elements, in my opinion. First is context. So it very much depends on what kind of discipline or context you're operating. The second element of strategy is choice. So you can make choices within the context that you're operating, and the metrics that you are developing should be linked to the strategic choices and the context that you're operating in. That could be a solution for the collective part, but that is not necessarily a solution for an individual, because what tends to happen, I have already heard people doing that you cannot use Google Scholar anymore, but as soon as you're in a panel, then people start Googling. And they look at the Google Scholar page and the age index. So part of it is training, I think, of people and make them aware. Similar to that, we have bias training for recruitment and selection. So training, I think, is very important on the skills. And part of it is, this is an exciting part. And we are in the transition phase. And so I don't have the clear-cut answer yet. Tough question.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think some of the initiatives that you have been explaining are pioneering, are really new things, new approaches. My question is how the Dutch government or the Association of Universities or the research centers are following this initiative of the University of Utrecht.
Now, first of all, we are not alone. So we also within the Netherlands cooperate with universities, and some of the universities are also pioneering. And one of our favorite universities is Leiden, because they're very good in metrics. They have this institute that Javier was also referring to, with Sarah de Rijke, who's a scientific expert in bibliometrics and metrics, etc. We are much more on the change part. They are on the metrics, so we meet on, I think, every 8 weeks. We share our experiences. We even, it's more than sharing, we use each other's material. For training, for example, they have developed something that we are now applying within Utrecht University. And some of the things that we've been doing, we are sharing to them. So we are not alone. Maybe we're very much in the news, and it's part of our strategy. But I think other universities, Twente, in the eastern part of the Netherlands, is on the move. Also because there's a dean who's very active on that, Erasmus University as well. So there are multiple pockets. What we try to do is build coalitions, also to learn from each other. And we try to stimulate not only learning on a university level, but also on a discipline on a faculty level. What we try to do at the moment is because I talked to the chair of the, how do you call that? Not our university board, but the ones who are seeing the university board, and she was worried that we are pioneering too much. And I said, no, I don't think that's the case, but we have to lower the media attention a little bit, because otherwise we get all the heat all the time. So, for example, if there are vacancies in the university, and the vacancies do not really fit the profile of recognition and rewards, the whole of the Netherlands say, yeah, but you're saying recognition and reward, and here's this vacancy in this small area that does not fit what you're saying. Yeah, this is going to happen for the next couple of years, that not everybody is already aligned to our own university. So we use a little bit. So it's a good question. We're not there yet, and we're not alone.
Hi. Thank you very much. It might be related to the first question. I'm all for a basket of indicators, multidimensional indicators, and I'm all for indicators not drive decisions but support decisions. But what do you do when you have too many applicants, more than humanly possible manageable for the ones evaluating? You have to rely on some mathematical ranking to filter the 80% of the applicants. I don't know, 200 applicants. How do you assess them, all of them, if you don't do a pre-filter?
It's also a tough question and a very good question. First of all, there are still debates also in the Netherlands that maybe we should apply on partly a lottery. At a certain point, I mean, 40–50% of the applicants, they're all excellent or good one way or another. How can we make a distinction between them? I've been in such panels where I think the 30–40% I would grant them. And maybe 50%. So there are voices who argue, shouldn't it be some kind of lottery one way or another? Then it's perhaps more fair. The other thing is that it also depends on how the system of finance is organized. And we've, at least in the Netherlands, and I know that it's in other countries as well, we've introduced a lot of competition because there are limited resources and there are lots of people who have to apply. Now, one thing what in my department I try to do is to not stimulate everybody to apply for grants. And we've been very successful in that. So in my department, we only select people where we think that they are capable of doing that, but also highly motivated, who are flexible and can actually handle it. And we make it a joint effort in the end. So, and we have in our own national funding, NWO, we have multiple VDs, that's 800,000 or something, but very limited to specific people. And the thing is, those grants are not necessary for making promotions. So people can make a promotion on the basis of other criteria. So I've recently myself been involved in the promotion of associate professors, 4 of them, none of them had any significant research grant, but they were promoted on the basis of other qualities. So it's more of a differentiated strategy that you can apply that also, it's completely useless to, if I say to all my assistant professors, you have to go for the VENI NWO, that's 200,000 euros. Everybody has to do that, and collectively, we will probably have 3 or 4 every year, or let's say 2 or 3. But I don't want that because I'm going to frustrate 20 assistant professors on doing that. I can make use of them in many other ways. So I think we can, there's something that needs to be done on the institutional level, on resources, and maybe a different system of evaluation. But you can also try to do something on the organizational level. I don't know if this is the answer of for you. Yeah.
I think it's me here in the... Okay, this is Nuria from ICN2. I have like a request and a question. I think you're pioneering, as you said, and we will be willing to find some kind of metrics on your results in the coming years, mostly on, because here in Spain we have a lack of funding for research. That's a reality here. We are not, just yesterday the Minister of Science announced the first pilot of base funding for research groups, because we are not, our base structure are not really funded, and this is a very important constraint at the system. So researchers only rely on competitive funds normally. So one of the fears here is what happens if we adopt this system and do not get enough funding, mostly from European level. That is one of the most important for us. So we will be willing you to also give us some results on what happens on the recovery of competitive funding when you apply this kind of new indicators to evaluate researchers. I think this is the request I would give to you. And the question is also regarding what scares more our researchers is that when we talk about this kind of changes and this way of doing evaluation more flexible, what our researchers hear is they don't know how we will be evaluating them in the coming years. And this is like, they panic. at that point. So how do you manage this? How do you manage researchers not knowing what will be the evaluation process in 10 years when they will be evaluated by what they did today?
Wow, I have a whole set of tough questions, honest answers. Thank you for that. The first one, sometimes an institutional radical change can be helpful. In the Netherlands, we didn't expect that, but we had a lot of temporary contracts, and because of the new collective bargaining agreement, all of a sudden that is prohibited. So universities are kind of forced now to employ almost everybody with a permanent contract. Now, that is, in a way, for the people, that can be very nice, because then they have more security, and employment security, perceived employment security, is a best practice in HRM. So if you offer people some kind of form of employment security, that really helps, and evidence proves that. But then you need to have work. If there's no work, if there are no grants, you might end up with a huge problem. So yeah, the thing is, I strongly believe in that the risk of a one-trick pony applies to both the organization and an individual. If you can only do one thing, you're very vulnerable anyway, even if you have a permanent contract. So I would reckon everybody to think about being active at least on 2 domains, because then you can interact and you're less vulnerable. This also applies to every other sector. If you only do research, and I've been a postdoc, it's fine for a couple of years. But 10 years of only doing research, I would not reckon that to anybody. Don't do that. Because you also need to develop other skills and have the opportunity. The organization, on the other hand, needs to offer the opportunity to do so. A little bit of teaching, managerial skills, or development. And I think it's extremely important. And I forgot your second point. How do people know early career? Yeah, that's a difficult one. I sometimes use my own example. When I was an assistant professor at Tilburg University, I was looking for a textbook on strategic HRM with a lot of European cases as an example. I couldn't find an English textbook that matched what I was looking for. And I had 200 students in class. And then a publisher said, why don't you write that book yourself? So I asked everybody, 2004 this was, in my environment, should I write this textbook? And everybody said, including my former promoter, my new boss, my colleague said, Paul, don't write a textbook. You should focus on A publications. And then everybody said you shouldn't do it, and I did it. Yeah, so I did it. And this textbook actually is one of the reasons that I became a full professor quite early. I think between 15,000 and 20,000 copies have been sold. So sometimes you have to do something that is absolutely ridiculous and stupid. But it made me think that if everybody says that you shouldn't do it, then there might be a market in there. And there was a market, and everybody was focused on. And I could have published in the top-ranked journals, and so what? Later on, I was able to do so anyway in different ways. So I would also stimulate early career academics to think out of the box. There's one other thing that really worries me. I don't know how the labor market shortages are in Spain, but in the Netherlands at the moment, I'm extremely worried that my talents are not willing to join academia, and I have talents who walk away from academia. Why? Because we're a very poor employer. People have to work way too hard. It is a productification. It's become a factory. Where's the fun? So I've lost a couple of my PhD students who have gone outside of academia, who are very talented in both research and education. And this is what I'm very much worried about. So I think we should nurture a little bit also the next generation and be more flexible and take that into account. Otherwise, we lose a lot of talent.
One last short question.
Well, short. So, 2 things. I'll try to be short. Thanks, and a tiny question. Thanks, because actually what you are giving us today is redemption. So I have always, all my life, tried to strive to be a 5-leg goat, top dog, and so on and so forth. I have miserably failed, and now I know that perhaps there's other ways, right? So, yeah. Thanks. Second, you mentioned rankings, and I'm really concerned about rankings. There's a favorite subject of mine. And there's this attempt that was set up a few years ago, the EU multi-rank by the European Commission. I wonder if you could comment on that.
I would love to, but I don't have the knowledge about that, or maybe Javier has it during the break that he can talk about. The only thing I know, this is the next subject I'm going to focus on, because it has this kind of disruptive effect on us. And in general, at Utrecht, we are kind of, that's the other thing, we noticed that a lot of things have been outsourced. So a lot of the activities that we could be considered to be core to us have been outsourced to private companies. It's data storage, it's even the software, it's also the rankings. I think that's not good. So we should also rethink, and we have a program on that as well, that we should institutionalize it and make it more public again. Maybe not for a university, but for a network. Like the Web of Science, it was open to everybody as well. And then it comes back to open science. Shouldn't be everything that we deliver should be open as much as possible and public to create public value. So thank you for that. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. Thank you to both speakers, Paul and Javier. And we have coffee now waiting for us. We have about half an hour coffee break. I would advise you to take if you have any valuables with you, just in case. You know, there's a security person downstairs, but you never know. So, so we're back at 11:30. Okay, thank you.
Won't hesitate.